everybody. I've just put Emily down for her nap. I've got a minute on the clock. So I'm going to really quickly do the breastfeeding, pumping video. And I've got a bunch of questions that I've screenshot just from Instagram. This is just from my personal Instagram, so I've got to jump into Reno Diary because there was a whole bunch in there as well. And hopefully I'll have time to answer everybody's question. So I haven't had a chance to kind of order these questions, but basically I think I'll just tell the story really quickly of our breastfeeding journey. So I shared on Instagram yesterday some photos of, I've just had a lactation cookie, of course, and my throat's a bit itchy. So I shared some photos of when I started pumping, and I started pumping back in December, and then obviously it's March now, so I showed a little bit of a before and after as to where the supply's at, and let everybody know that I'm no longer exclusively pumping and just breastfeeding once a day. We've gone back to almost full breastfeeding, so I'm just doing 2 bottles a day, and the rest is straight breastfeeding, which for me is huge. So just going back a little bit back to December, and sorry if you can hear that construction noise, like everybody in our street is renovating except us at the moment, which is really annoying because that's all we ever hear. I guess it's a bit of payback for us. So you can hear the construction noise in the background, my apologies. So yeah, going back to December, we had Emily in November, and we had a really good start to breastfeeding. Like, we had a lot of the midwives commenting really early on how well Emily had taken to the boob, and it just seemed to be going really good. Every time we had the midwife come and visit me here at home for the first 6 weeks, everything seemed to be going really well. We were having really good weight gain. Emily was actually ahead of where she was expected to be at week 3. There was lots of wet nappies, which is another way that they say that you can track whether the baby's getting enough or not. So yeah, it was all going really well, so we thought, until our 6-week needles, and we went in and the doctor weighed her, and she'd actually lost weight that week, and he started asking me if I'd been pumping, which I had just started that week. I just started pumping just to build up a bit of a stash, not because I thought I needed to, and I absolutely hated it. So I bought a Tommy Tippy pump, which was so crappy. I don't want to swear on YouTube. It's the worst pump ever. Do not buy it. It's a Tommy Tippy, I'm not sure what it's called, but it's one of the wireless ones. It was absolute crap, so don't buy it. But basically I had just used that, and I hated the experience of it. So I'd said to Dan, I don't think pumping's for me, I just want to breastfeed. And yeah, basically at that point I didn't think that I was going to need to pump, so I wasn't really concerned about it. But I had noticed that when I did pump, only a little bit had come out. So when the doctor asked me if I'd been pumping and how much I had pumped, I told him the volume, which I hadn't really looked into much at that point. And he said that it was pretty low and that I should get my supply looked into. He was obviously concerned because at that point she'd lost 80 grams in a week. And obviously the midwife scales and his scales may not have been exactly the same, but basically she'd lost weight anyway. So we were quite alarmed by that. We'd had our suspicions that week because the midwife had said, because Emily was struggling with sleep, why don't you top her up with a little bottle? So give her some expressed milk or formula. And we had a tin of formula, and that week we'd given her a little top up. I think at that point it was just breast milk. I honestly can't remember. But I remember giving her a little top up, and she completely sculled the milk. It was 30 mils. So we gave her another 30 mils, and she sculled that as well. And we're thinking, what's going on here? So then we gave her more, and it ended up being the first time we gave her a top up that she had over 100 mils. So that was a bit of a signal. And then obviously going to see the doctor a day or 2 later, and him saying that he thought I might have some supply issues and she'd lost weight, then we were really alarmed. So we ended up giving her more formula, and I had booked in to see a lactation consultant. Funnily enough, I'd already booked in to see the lactation consultant, and there was a bit of a wait time. So I must have known something was off. I think I'd had my suspicions because I knew that Emily kept falling asleep on the boob, and I wasn't sure if she was getting enough milk or not, but I booked in to see a lactation consultant anyway, just to have it investigated. So the timing of that was good. We went to see the lactation consultant, who was amazing. So we went to see Bridget Ingle. If you're in Brisbane, she's one of the best. And yeah, she basically said that Emily was not latching correctly. So she was kind of latching at the top of the breast, not underneath. So they've got to always be latching underneath the nipple so that they're not sucking up the milk, but the milk is like coming down to them. So that was a huge part of the problem, but also the fact that Emily would fall asleep at the boob really easily. So I used to try to wake her up constantly. From about week 3 onwards, we'd had issues with keeping her awake, which apparently is very common because babies are biologically programmed to fall asleep on the boob. So yeah, basically we had a bit of a plan of action. At the time, she said you're going to need to pump after every feed, and you're also going to need to do a supply line, which is where you tape a tube to your nipple and you push milk through a syringe to get the baby to basically encourage them to suck better, because they're getting that instant milk coming through the tube and they don't realise they think it's coming from the boob. So at the time I came home, I had my supply line. I had decided to buy a new pump because the Tommy Tippy one, there goes a truck, the Tommy Tippy one that I said was crap, had actually broken. And what a blessing in disguise, because the day I went to see the lactation consultant, I went to Baby Bunting and bought a new pump, the Medela Maxi Swing, and the first time I used that, I straight away had like double the volume of milk. So I knew that my supply wasn't as bad as I thought. It was just the crappy pump that I was using. So yeah, I'll never forget coming home that day, sitting at this kitchen bench behind me. It was just covered. I'll have to show the video if I can put it in here. Just covered in all the stuff. It was so overwhelming, like trying to learn this new pump, trying to get the supply line sorted, and just freaking out because I'd just been told that my baby basically was hungry and had probably been hungry for the last 3 weeks because she'd been crying so much and not sleeping well. So it was just awful, like a really, really challenging week, challenging day, that day in particular. Dan was still at work at the time, so I was kind of navigating this all by myself. And it was really difficult. For one day, I tried the supply line. So I would set up the supply line, feed her that way. It was failing miserably. I couldn't get it to work. Then I would feed her just normally on the boob. Then I would give her a bottle, and then I would pump. And you're doing this all consecutively. And it was just too much for me because I just found it really stressful. And by the time I'd gotten through that process, it was basically time to put her down to bed, because back then I was working on shorter wake windows. And that's a whole other topic, because the wake windows that I was working towards were not right. But anyway, we'll talk about that in the sleep video. So in the end, it was actually our sleep consultant who came over about 2 weeks later. No, it wasn't, sorry, it was a week later. She came over when Emily was 7 weeks, and she was like, you need to simplify this. You're keeping your baby up way too long. And I was like, I know, but it's because I'm doing this whole process. She was like, you need to simplify it. Just give her a bottle, basically. And I was like, do you know what? I just need to do that. I needed someone else to come in and just tell me that, because I think my mental health was suffering at the time, like undoubtedly. So she came in and simplified things for us, even though she's not a lactation consultant. It was just the sleep at the time was really important to me, and Emily wasn't sleeping at all during the day. So I ended up only doing the supply line for a day. I just could not handle it. It was too much. And then once the sleep consultant came in, I changed it up. So I started pumping when Emily went to sleep rather than pumping straight after her feed. And because breastfeeding was taking so long, we decided that I would exclusively pump, and I was just breastfeeding her once a day in the morning, first thing, just to give her some practice. And for the rest of the day, she would get expressed breast milk. And at the time, I didn't have enough supply. So we were also doing initially about 2 bottles of formula a day. And then it ended up being, once I'd sorted out some supplements, it ended up just being 1 bottle of formula a day. So just mindful of the questions. I think I'm covering a lot of this as I go. So from there, what I had done, right, was the day I started pumping, so literally the day we saw the doctor, he straight away said, I'm going to do a script for Motilium or domperidone, which is a drug that will, in some women, increase their supply. And I'm anti-drugs. Like, I, as a lot of you will know, had blood clots in my lungs from the contraceptive pill in 2012. So I'm totally against drugs. So I was like, I'm absolutely not going to take this domperidone. I'd read about it. It had serious side effects. I'd heard all sorts of terrible things that happen to women who are on it. So I wanted to try to boost my supply naturally. So I tried Fenugreek and a couple of other herbs, which I'll put in the notes because I can't remember them. It was like Goats Rue, Moringa powder, all this stuff. In the end, I found that nothing really impacted my supply because if I forgot to take it, the supply didn't change. However, about a month ago, I ran out of Fenugreek, and interestingly, my first pump without taking the Fenugreek was higher than normal. And Dan was like, we need to get you that Fenugreek. We've got to hurry up and get to the chemist today. And we were out at my sister's up the coast. And by the time we got to a point where we could get to a chemist, I had pumped a few times and noticed that my pumps were bigger each time. So I started to wonder if it was the Fenugreek, and I'd heard that that can negatively impact your supply, but I never knew that that was negatively impacting my supply because I'd been taking it from day one of pumping. So in the end, I stopped taking Fenugreek and I started taking Brewers Yeast. So I actually just had a delivery arrive today. I'll show you actually. Okay, so these are Brewers Yeast capsules. It's just a brand called Made to Milk. So I started taking these capsules and I take them all day. I have 3 with breakfast, 3 with lunch, and 3 with dinner. And then I also have 2 lactation cookies. So I've got a few different flavors here. This is totally not sponsored, by the way. I wish, because I buy them non-stop. I do have 2 lactation cookies a day, which I was worried about weight gain, but I have not put on any weight. Like, the breastfeeding for me has kept the weight off. Yeah, I just can't put on weight, and I'm drinking wine every night, and I'm eating healthy, but I definitely treat myself every night and often have dessert. So yeah, not worried about weight gain at the moment because it's not happening. If I did start to gain weight, I would definitely stop taking the cookies and just have more capsules. But these have been a lifesaver. So they've definitely increased my supply. It's Brewers Yeast and Flaxseed powder. So since stopping Fenugreek and then just carrying on with the Brewers Yeast, I was able to stop giving Amelie formula. So my supply had been boosted enough, which was huge for me. Like, that was a massive win, and that was about, like I said, I think a month ago. So I would definitely recommend that if you're taking Fenugreek, that if you're brave enough, stop for 2 days and just see if you have a negative or positive response to your supply. Because yeah, I wish that I had done that earlier, because I was taking Fenugreek for like, I don't know, 2.5 months, and I could have been not using formula that whole time. So that's the only supplements that I would suggest. I also have a lot of water. I have about 4 litres a day, so every time she goes down for a nap, I make sure that I drink a litre of water, and she has 4 naps a day. And then through the night, I just drink as much as I can on that note. So that was the main thing. And then there's so many questions like, what did you do to increase your supply? So those were the things. I could have been pumping more, but I didn't. I just mentally did not have the capacity to, and I was making enough anyway for her. So I found that 6 times a day was all I needed to do, and basically I tried to time it around whenever I would feed her. It was within an hour of that I would pump. So what has been a real game changer for me in the last 2 weeks is a friend of mine, thank you Alicia. We were having this chat and I said, I'm at a point now where I'm breastfeeding Emily in the morning and I know that she's not falling asleep on the boob anymore. She used to fall asleep like literally 12, 15 times in a feed. And I would have to like blow on her face or use wet wipes or like all sorts of things, like tickle her feet, any sort of trick in the book to wake her up and to get her to keep feeding. And gradually, because it's been like, we started early December, so it's been like three, nearly 4 months of practicing one breastfeed every morning, first feed of the day. She's progressively gotten better and better and has stopped falling asleep at the boob. So I was saying to Alicia, I think she's ready to breastfeed again and I can stop pumping so much, but I'm so nervous that I know in the afternoons I don't pump enough. I pump a lot in the morning, and as the day goes on, you know, I'm only pumping sometimes 90 mils and she takes 150 at every feed. And so she was like, why don't you just weigh her? And I had heard that weighing babies before and after feed isn't very accurate. My midwife suggested that I don't do it. But I thought I'm just going to try it, and in the end it's so accurate. So the scales I'm using are just the Oricom, I think it's called, brand from Baby Bunting. So it only goes up in 10 gram increments, but that's fine. It's accurate enough for me. So basically for every 10 grams you just convert that is to 10 mils, and it's super accurate because when I was topping her up last week, say she would breastfeed, I'd weigh her, and then I would give her a 60 mil top up. When I weighed her, she would go up by 60 grams. And I've tested this so many times now, I'm really confident that the scale's accurate. So I started weighing her before and after feeds. I did it once a day, then 3 times a day, and then worked up the confidence recently to do it all day long, except for the nighttime feed. And it was crazy. Like within 2 days, my supply started getting bigger and bigger. Within 3 days, I was no longer needing to top her up. Within a week, we're at a point now where she's getting over 150 mils from me at every feed, and I was never pumping that much. So when I was pumping, like I said, sometimes I would only get like 90 mils in the afternoon. So that proved to me that I know a baby is more effective than a pump at getting out the milk, but the baby is obviously also more effective at increasing the supply and signaling to your breast to make more milk. So I didn't know that. If I did, I would have started so much earlier in giving her more of an opportunity to be on the boob. So that has been the game changer for me. I'm still weighing her before and after every feed. I'm probably going to stop doing that because I'm getting really confident now. I'm never weighing her and she's under 130 mils, which is, you know, she probably only needs 120 mil per feed. So yeah, I'm getting really confident with it. My boobs feel so much fuller throughout the day, which is crazy because they never felt like that throughout the day. So yeah, that's what I would recommend. I know everybody's situation is different, but the game changer for me has been Brewers Yeast and more breastfeeding, less pumping. Initially, when I first started doing this, I was breastfeeding her, so weighing her, breastfeeding her, weighing her, and then pumping after to get any leftover milk out. But I stopped doing that because I felt like that pump was then impacting her next feed. So I stopped doing that, and I'm not pumping at all now except at nighttime. So that's where I'm at. I feel like this is really rushed, but you know, I don't have much time, so I'm sorry about that. Okay, so questions now, I'm just going to read through these all. They're probably not going to be in any sort of order because this is just the order I've received them. So how did you manage boobs leaking? I wear breast pads pretty much all the time. As your milk supply gets more established, you don't leak as much. I pretty much only leak now through the night because I become engorged overnight, because I go like 8 hours without pumping, sometimes longer, 8 or 9 hours without pumping or a feed when Emily sleeps. But yeah, I just literally wear breast pads. That's all you can do, and it's really annoying because they look awful, but I think it would look worse if you had leaking boobs. How did you build your supply? How are you managing to breastfeed and pump for a stash? Looking to start pumping to stash. Breastfeeding is going well. Tips for starting. When do you schedule in a pumping session to build a stash for the freezer? So there's a few of these sorts of questions. So there's a particular type of hormone or something. If I had more time, I'd be so better prepared and I would give you the correct term, but there's something in your body, something that occurs that makes your milk supply at its peak between 1 and 5 a.m. So that's the best time to pump, if you ask me. I'm pumping at 3 a.m. because Emily sleeps from 6 till 3, and I get up and I'm completely engorged, and that's when I pump, because I always get like 300 mils minimum. It's usually like I fill each bottle basically and then I stop. So that's definitely the best time for me to pump. And Dan gives Emily a bottle at that time of expressed milk, so it gives me the opportunity to pump. And that's what I'm going to continue to do until she's sleeping right through from 6 till 6. Then I'm going to hopefully pump in the morning, so I'll feed her and pump anything that's left over. But right now, because that is when my supply is at its peak and I'm completely engorged, that's the best time I find to pump. You could pump in the morning. Obviously, the one thing that you want to keep in mind, and the thing that I found, is if you're pumping when it's close to you needing to feed your baby, it's going to impact the supply that you have for your baby. So it's more important to feed them and then pump, but I would only be doing that if you know that you have a really big supply at that time, so that your baby's getting enough. I'm not really an expert on pumping, I'm just sharing my experience, so I'm sorry if this isn't useful, but yeah, this is all I know. What brand hands-free breast pump did you use? How does it compare to the Medela? As I said, Tommy Tippy, absolute crap. I need to write a review because I want to save other mums from buying that and thinking that they have a really poor supply, when in actual fact it's just that crap pump. And even just the shape of it, it was just impossible to get the milk out. I've got photos of it, I'll have to show you if I can insert them in here. So don't buy the Tommy Tippy. Apparently all wire-free breast pumps are just not that effective, so I would definitely recommend that you get something that is portable but not wire-free. Maybe have a wire-free one if you need to pump in the car, but I would definitely suggest the Medela Swing Maxi or one of the Spectras. If you can, just go for a Spectra straight away, because they're definitely the best one on the market. I've only just bought one and I just used it yesterday for the first time, so it's too early for me to tell whether it's better than the Medela or not, but I am going to do a little quick YouTube review of both of them in a couple of weeks' time, where I'll go through the specifics of each, because already there's some clear pros and cons for each of them. So give me a week or two and I'll come back and do, give me a couple of weeks and I'll come back and do a really short YouTube video on those. Pumping essentials, okay. Definitely a pumping bra. It's so annoying holding them, which is what I did for some stupid reason for like the first 2 months. So get a pumping bra, and make sure that you have extra bottles and the caps, so that if you're in a rush, you can just leave the milk in the bottle, put the cap on and chuck it in the fridge, or if you're out and about, you can put it in a little cooler bag with ice packs. I would definitely say to get a big box for the fridge. Actually, I'll show you what I'm using. So I keep this in the fridge, and it's got its own, I've got like a shelf that's devoted to my pumping stuff and my breast milk, because I don't want it to be contaminated by anything in the fridge. But basically I just keep the top of the pump in here. I only am using this, well, I'm not actually going to be using this, but I'm using this Spectra for a little while, but I was just using this pump twice a day, and I sterilize it once a day. So you keep it in the fridge in between uses, and then you just put a fresh bottle underneath it, and then it's so much easier because breast milk has antimicrobial properties, so you don't have to wash and sterilize it every time. Other pumping essentials, I just have this felt bag, which is where I chuck everything in. So I've got like the pumping bra, a lactation massager, because I'm always massaging my breasts to make sure that I don't get any clogged milk ducts or mastitis or anything. So touch wood, I've not had mastitis, and I think it's because I'm always checking that the milk is gone and there's no lumps. And then just little feet for your pumps, because when you take the pump off, when I wasn't using these, there were so many times that I would put the pump down and it would fall over and I spilt milk everywhere. And whoever said don't cry over spilt milk was obviously not talking about breast milk, because I cried every time. It's literally so sad when that happens. So get the little feet, make sure that when you put the breast pump down that it's not going to fall over. So yeah, I just basically have that and take it around the house with me. I'll chuck the pump in there when it's charged, so it's just ready to go. And especially if you're going to do the 3 a.m. or whatever time your baby wakes through the night, or whatever you decide to do, if you've got everything just in a little bag next to the bed, it makes it so much easier and faster. You can just put it all on, pump, chuck everything in the fridge like I just showed you, and then go straight back to sleep. So for me, it's literally a 25-minute routine at 3 a.m. Thankfully, I have an amazing husband who will feed the baby while I'm doing that. And we're going to continue to do that until she's on solids and sleeps through. Other than that, pumping essentials, well, I have a sterilizer. So just in our appliance cupboard behind me, there's 2 sterilizers. I've only just started using 2 because I've got 2 breast pumps. And with the bottles at the moment, I've just had a lot to clean, but I'm going to put one away and just keep one in there. But you do need a sterilizer for obviously bottles and for your pump parts. I have the Philips Aventi and the Dr. Brown's, and they're both really good. I don't really have a preference. The Dr. Brown's is easier to clean because they do get a build-up of scale in them, so you have to descale them. But they're both really good. The Dr. Brown's one has been beeping a lot lately, which really bugs me. I don't know what's wrong with it. So if I had to say, probably go the Philips because it hasn't been annoying and beeping. I think that's it for pumping essentials. I'm sure there's other things that I'm missing, but obviously they can't be that important, or I would have mentioned them already. Which bottles have you been using? So I am using, and this says, did you do anything to avoid bottle preference? I'm using the Dr. Brown's narrow neck bottles. I'll show you them. I basically have this drawer in the kitchen. Hopefully you can hear me over there. This drawer in the kitchen is full of all my pumping stuff and bottles, and so I've got a full drawer with lots of different bits and pieces, because since I started this whole bottle feeding journey and pumping journey, I've gone through lots of different products. So I started on the Tomo bottles, but they're not recommended by the Lactation Consultant because you want your baby to not prefer a bottle. So you don't want it to think that this is comfortable and nice and soft, and it flows really well. So we've got the Dr. Brown's Natural Flow. I've actually just gone back to a level 1 teat because she was on a level 2, but it's so much faster than the boob that she was starting to hate the bottle, and she was really getting upset a couple of nights ago. So we've gone back to a level 1 teat, but these are the bottles that are recommended by my lactation consultant. They are BPA free. They're definitely not the bottle that I would have chosen before I was a mum and I was all, I must have glass and all that stuff that just in reality isn't always possible. So definitely recommend those bottles. I just remembered one other thing that's an essential for pumping. For pumping, you also need breast milk bags. I just use the Medela ones. They're the best ones I've found so far. And a Sharpie. So I keep those. I've got a couple of Sharpies and I just buy loads of these bags. I won't need as many now because I'm only pumping for a stash, but Medela do the best breast milk bags. So you definitely need those to keep them handy. I did buy the Hacker silicone reusable breast milk storage bags. They're crap. They don't have anywhere to actually write the quantity and the date and that sort of thing. They come with these tags, but where do you put the tags? I know that they're more environmentally friendly, but at the end of the day, as I said, sometimes they're just not the best option from a practicality point of view. So just buy the Medela plastic bags. They are BPA and all that free. I'm in the same boat as you and pumping very tiny amounts. It's so disheartening. How did you increase? So we obviously went over that, and I'm so sorry to hear that because I know what it's like. Obviously, I've been really open with my journey and how heartbreaking it was. But you just have to see a lactation consultant, see someone good, get some help, and don't give up. Because for me, it's been such a long journey. It's been just under 4 months. and we got there in the end, and I'm so glad that I persevered. Favourite bottles, recommendation of pump. Oh, I adore that you got there together, best news ever, celebrate this big win, thank you. Okay, I feel like I've answered a lot of these. When do you plan your wines in with feeding or pumping? I'm a new mama soon and ready for a drink. Oh my God, I know that feeling. When I was pregnant, I did actually have 3 drinks during the pregnancy. I had a glass of champagne, a glass of red and a glass of white, all within the first 15 weeks. But once I felt her moving, I could not drink, I just couldn't. And it tasted like crap anyway, so I totally get that you're hanging out there. I just noticed another one that says, also all your wine is making me so jealous. I'm looking forward to a glass. Yes, love wine, don't I? So when do I plan my wines in? Basically what the lactation consultant said is that when you're pumping, then you can have a glass, because it takes about 30 minutes before the alcohol enters your bloodstream, and then you need to wait an hour 50 for every glass that you drink. I have the Feed Safe app, and I start the timer, and if I've had 2 drinks, I start the timer. But because Amelie's now at a point where, touch wood, she has for ages now slept like 8 hours solid, 7 on a bad night, I know that worst case scenario, once I put her to bed, I can have 3 drinks. And obviously I've got a stash of milk if she ever woke up early and needed some milk. But all I would say is just use that app, and only do it when you have an established feeding schedule. Emily feeds every 3 hours, and then obviously a really long stint through the night where she doesn't feed. So I'm in a position now where we can do that, but if you're cluster feeding and you have a newborn, then I would be really, really cautious about having a drink. That would be my advice. Did you get any support? I'm going into number 2 due in June and wanting to be better informed. Congratulations, that's very exciting. Yes, I had support. I had a number of visits with a lactation consultant, as I said, who's one of the best in, well, I would say up there in Australia. She's so well regarded, Bridget Ingle. Just go and see a lactation consultant. Like, if I could talk to myself when Amelie was born, or just before, I would have booked in a lactation consultant straight away, even before there's issues. Like, get a professional in, check the latch, check your supply, get some tips, just get ahead of any problems. And I would do the same with a sleep consultant. Like, I waited too long. I saw these professionals when there was a problem rather than seeing them proactively. And I know that it costs, you know, a lot of money to do those things, but it costs a lot of money if you don't fix these problems. The last question I'm going to quickly answer. Any books or resources that you recommend for a first-time mum to be? Yes, slightly off topic, but not. The Emily Oster books are amazing. Her 2 books, she's got 3, but get the 2 that are for newborns or mums to be. So Crib Sheet and Expecting Better, they're amazing. She is all about facts and not advice. So if you're looking for information that is scientifically backed, definitely get both of those books, they're amazing. The other book that I highly recommend is by Dr. Vincent Ho. What's it called? I've read this book like so many times and I still don't remember the name of it. Here it is, Healthy Baby Gut Guide by Dr. Vincent Ho. If you want a 4th, it's called Brain Rules for Baby. The book is one of those, like, it's just so eye-opening, and I'm so glad that I read it. There's so much that I'm already implementing for Amelie and her development. Okay, so that's half an hour. I have got to go and get Amelie. I hope that's been useful. I'm sure I've forgotten loads of things, but I will come back and do the rest of the questions another time. But I think we got through the bulk of it, and obviously reach out to me on Instagram if you have any questions.